Last Days of Socrates with Leo McKern. Part 1.
Panton Sophotatos Socrates.
In the year 399 BC, Socrates, at the age of 70, was brought to trial on charges of impiety and of corrupting the minds of the young. He was found guilty and was condemned to death. Plato, his most devoted disciple, has presented in his early dialogues the essence of his teaching and the logical system of question and answer that Socrates perfected in order to define the nature of virtue and knowledge. In 4 of his works, Euthyphro, The Defense of Socrates, Crito and Phaedo, Plato presents Socrates before, during, and after his trial. The last one of these is an account of Socrates' last hours in prison and ends with his drinking the hemlock.
Ti to Hosion.
Euthyphro. Athens, 399 BC. Outside the courthouse where he is shortly to stand trial, Socrates meets Euthyphro, a religious expert.
Socrates! You here?
Euthyphro!
How come you've left your usual haunts? I don't suppose you've actually got a case for trial, as I have.
No, Euthyphro, it's not a private case, but a public action.
I can only assume that someone has brought an action against you, then.
Exactly.
And who is he?
I don't even know him very well myself, Euthyphro. He seems to be a young man of no particular distinction. I believe he's called Miletus.
Miletus?
Young, long, straight hair and a thinnish beard and a rather beaky nose.
I don't remember him, Socrates. But tell me, what sort of action has he brought against you?
What sort? Not a trivial one, as I see it. It's no small achievement to have made such an important discovery at his age. He claims to know how the characters of the young get corrupted and who the people are that are responsible. I expect that he's a clever fellow who has observed my ignorance and is coming forward to denounce me to the state for corrupting his contemporaries, like a little boy telling his mother. It seems to me that he's the only one of our politicians who is beginning in the right way. Because the right way is to give one's attention first to the highest good of the young. He will obviously become the author of countless incalculable benefits to the state. At any rate, that would be the natural result from such a beginning.
I should wish it to be so, Socrates, but I am very much afraid that the opposite will happen. It seems to me that in trying to injure you, he is simply beginning to ruin our city at its very heart. Tell me, what are the activities by which he asserts that you corrupt the young?
Absurd ones, my very good friend. At any rate, on the first hearing, he says that I am an inventor of gods. And it is precisely because I invent new gods and don't acknowledge the old ones that he has brought this action against me. So it says.
I see, Socrates. It's because of your saying that you are constantly visited by your supernatural voice. So he has indicted you for introducing unorthodox views. And he is coming into court to misrepresent this sort of thing to the masses.
That's right.
Why, you know, even in my own experience, when, in predicting the future, I make some statement about religion to them in the assembly, they laugh at me as if I were crazy. And yet I have never predicted a word that wasn't true. But it makes no difference. They are jealous of all of us who possess these qualities.
Oh.
Still, we mustn't let them worry us, but close with them boldly.
But, my dear Euthyphro, just being laughed at is presumably nothing to worry about. If they only intend to laugh at me, as you say they do at you, it wouldn't be at all unpleasant to spend our time in the law court joking and laughing. But if they're going to be serious, then there's no knowing how the case will turn out. Except for you prophets.
I dare say that it will come to nothing, Socrates, and you will conduct your case satisfactorily, as I expect to conduct mine.
Oh, yes, Euthyphro. What is this lawsuit of yours? Are you defending or prosecuting?
Prosecuting.
Whom?
Someone. By prosecuting whom, I'm increasing my reputation for craziness. My father.
My good man, your own father? What is the charge?
Manslaughter, Socrates.
Good heavens. Oh, of course, Euthyphro. Most people have no idea what the rights of such a case are.
I quite agree.
Is the person that your father has killed a member of your own household? Oh, obviously he is. You wouldn't, of course, be prosecuting him for killing an outsider.
It is funny that you should think that it makes any difference, Socrates. As a matter of fact, the deceased was a day labourer of mine. We were farming in Naxos, and he was working for us there. Well, he got drunk, lost his temper with one of our servants, and knifed him. So my father bound him hand and foot and threw him into a ditch, and then sent a man over here to ask the proper authority what was to be done. In the meanwhile, he not only troubled himself very little about the prisoner, but neglected him altogether, considering that he was a murderer, and it would not matter if he died. And that was just what happened. What with starvation and exposure and confinement, he died before the messenger came back from consulting the expert. That is why both my father and my other relations are angry with me, because on a murderer's behalf I am prosecuting my father for manslaughter, whereas in the first place, as they maintain, my father did not kill the man, and in the second, even supposing that he did kill him, since the dead man was a murderer, one needn't bother to defend such a person. At any rate, they say, it is an act of impiety for a son to prosecute his father for manslaughter. They have a poor comprehension, Socrates, of how the divine law stands with regard to piety and impiety.
But tell me, Euthyphro, do you really believe that you understand the ruling of the divine law so accurately? That in the circumstances you describe, you have no misgivings? Aren't you afraid that in taking your father into court you may turn out to be committing an act of impiety yourself?
No, Socrates. I would be no better than the common run of men if I didn't have accurate knowledge about all that sort of thing.
In that case, Euthyphro, since you have this remarkable talent, the best thing I can do, I suppose, is to become your pupil, and before Meletus's case against me comes on, to challenge him upon this very point, saying that even in the past I was eager for knowledge about religion, and now, since he asserts that I am grievously at fault in my independent thinking and in my unorthodox views about religion, I have become your pupil. And if he refuses to listen and doesn't drop the case against me, or indict you instead, I suppose I'd better repeat the same challenge in court. Is that right?
Upon my word, Socrates, if he really tried to indict me, I fancy I should find his weak spot, and we should have had our say about him in court long before he had his about me.
I realize that as well as you do, my dear friend. And that is why I appeal to you, to tell me what you mean by piety and impiety, both in respect of manslaughter and in all other connections. Isn't it true that in every action piety is self-identical, and similarly impiety, in every instance the opposite of piety, is yet also consistent with itself? In other words, that everything that is to be regarded as impious has a single definite characteristic in respect of its impiety.
No doubt that is quite true, Socrates.
Then tell me, how do you define piety and impiety?
Very well. I say that piety consists in just what I am doing now, prosecuting a wrongdoer for manslaughter or temple robbery or any other such crime, whether the offender happens to be your father or your mother or anybody else, and that not to prosecute such a person would constitute impiety.
No doubt. But surely you admit that there are many other actions that are either pious or impious.
So there are.
Well then, do you recollect that what I urged you to do was not to tell me about one or two of these many pious actions, but to describe the actual feature that makes all pious actions pious? Because you agreed, I believe, that impious actions are impious, and similarly pious ones pious, in virtue of a single definite characteristic, Or don't you remember?
Yes, I do.
Then explain to me what this characteristic is, in itself, so that by fixing my eyes upon it and using it as a pattern, I may be able to describe any action, yours or anyone else's, as pious if it corresponds to the pattern, and impious if it doesn't. What makes actions pious, and what impious?
If that's how you want your answer, Socrates, that's how I will give it.
That is how I want it.
Very well, then. What is agreeable to the gods is pious, and what is disagreeable to them, impious.
An excellent answer, Euthyphro, and in just the form that I wanted. Whether it is true, I don't know yet. But no doubt you will go on to make it clear to me that your statement is correct.
Certainly.
Yet isn't it common knowledge, Euthyphro, that the gods themselves are divided and disagree with one another?
Very well. Then I should say that piety is what all the gods love, and that the opposite, what all the gods hate, is impiety.
So an act of piety is loved by all the gods just because it is pious? Or for some other reason?
No, because it is pious.
So it is loved because it is pious, not pious because it is loved by the gods.
It seems so.
But it is because a thing is loved by the gods that it is an object of love, or God-beloved.
Of course.
Then what is God-beloved is not the same thing as what is pious, Euthyphro. Nor is what is pious the same as what is God-beloved, as you assert. They are two different things.
How do you make that out, Socrates?
Because we agreed that what is pious is loved because it is pious, and not pious because it is loved. Isn't that so?
Yes.
Isn't the truth rather that where there is piety, there is uprightness? But where there is uprightness, there is not always piety. Or do you think otherwise?
No, I think that you are right.
Then observe the next step. If piety is a form of moral uprightness, then presumably we ought to discover what kind of moral uprightness piety is. Don't you see that our discussion has gone right round and come back to the point from which we started, when we found that piety and what is God-beloved are not the same, but are two different things? Don't you remember?
Yes, I do.
Then we shall have to start our inquiry about piety all over again, because I shall never give up of my own accord until I have learnt the answer. Only don't refuse to take me seriously, but do your best now to give me your closest attention and tell me the truth, because you know it if any man does.
Yes, but Socrates...
If you didn't know all about piety and impiety, you would never have attempted to prosecute your aged father for manslaughter. You would have been too much afraid of the gods, and too much ashamed of what men might think, to run such a risk in case you should be wrong in doing so. So tell me your opinion, my most worthy Euthyphro, and don't conceal it.
Some other time, perhaps, Socrates.
But what a way to treat me, my friend. Fancy you going off like this.
But I have an urgent engagement somewhere.
I hope that if I learnt from you about piety and impiety, I could escape from Meletus's indictment by demonstrating to him that I had now become instructed by Euthyphro in religion.
I must be off.
And no longer, in my ignorance, express independent and unorthodox views. And also, I could live better for the rest of my life.